What's going on, YouTube? Grazzingcow with the graduate or from the graduates here with you guys today. Going to talk about the new updated ban list. So we're going to jump right into things because it's a pretty big list to address. The first and foremost biggest thing to happen: Yugioh Guardian comes back off the forbidden list. This is enormous. Yugioh Guardian is a monster of a threat. Strongest level 6 synchro at 2,800 attack points, and one of the most killer effects being when this card destroys an opponent's monster by battle and sends it to the grave, you get to special summon that monster to your side of the field. So pretty much now you can just wreck your opponent's cards and bring them back to your side of the field. The only thing one of the reasons I think they brought this card back, actually, there's a few, but the biggest one is that XYZ monsters are very prominent today, or Ixies, however you want to call them, are very prominent today in the game that we play. That being said, looking at Yugioh, he can kill an XYZ monster, and that's good. I mean, defeating any opponent's monster has its benefits. However, you get an XYZ monster on your field, and if it doesn't have a lot of attack points, it doesn't benefit you that much because you don't get its effect. If you don't get its effect, then the Ixie monster, unless it's the big beater, is useless. You can't synchro with it, you can't overlay with it unless it is a Chaos Ixie's material. It's not that good against XYZ powerhouses. However, that being said, Yugioh is an enormous player now in the game. He's so easy to drop. One tuner, one non-tuner can be dropped in any deck that runs a tuner that can play a 6. And he can now be splashed, especially in a Blackwing deck, which Blackwings haven't seen any play. They're virtually dead. But to see that even, or any other deck, like the Lightsworns now have their level 3 tuner, or even their level 4 that can sync with a Raikou or a Lumina, they can drop now a Yugioh Guardian, which becomes a big player on the field. A Yugioh is nothing to laugh at if you see it on the field, unless you are well prepared for it. Because he can seriously just run over it. Most cards, and on top of that, get them on his side of the field. And if he kills one of your best effect monsters and starts utilizing it, you're in trouble. Moving on then, a card that went 2-1 then, coming from 3, would be Yugioh. This card, I mean, Yugioh have definitely been doing a lot of work, and I've seen several YCSs where Yugioh are just over half the winnings. However, this card going to 1, I think, solves that problem perfectly. This card, if you're not familiar with it, just pretty much lets you drop 2 Yugioh on the field and get an XYZ of a big play by increasing their levels. This can be used then to drop 2 level 4s, make a level 5. It pretty much made an instant XYZ and was a monster of a threat. Putting it at 1, I think, limits that consistency basis for it, that the deck will not be playing as well, will not be doing as great as has been seen. Now moving on to cards that went to 2 from 1, as Yugioh is the only card to go down by 1, or go down, period. Every other card gets boosted in this list. We're going to start with Magician of Faith. Magician of Faith, level 1, spellcaster, didn't see any real play, I feel, coming off of that ban list to 1. At 2, I think she has a little bit more of a chance coming back. Thinking about it, Spellbooks could probably use her because she does let them recycle their 1 card that got hit to 1. Just to look at that, I mean, we have Spellbook of Fate did go to 1. A huge card for them. So Magician of Faith allowing them to recycle that and put it directly back into hand. Especially now that Pendulum Summoning is going to be hitting our format. I feel that a Needle Sealing is going to be a very big play that's going to be stapled in. Or a very big card's going to be stapled in, and setting monsters isn't going to be so foreign, as it's already becoming less uncommon now than it was. So setting Magician of Faith behind a Needle Sealing, getting ready to reuse a spell card when their Pendulum summons are set up, is a good thing, because then you can just stop their mass play, your Faith is safe, flip her, get your card. I don't think she's going to see a lot of play unless some crazy, something is found or new cards are released. But I do think that she will come back in some weird variations of Spellbooks and any other slightly interested spell-oriented decks. Moving on to the next card. Big one here, Rhoda. Reinforcement of the army coming to 2. Pretty much the spell version of Stratos here, but even better because it lets you search any warrior. Any warrior. This makes it splashable in so many decks. Any deck that runs like 4 warriors is going to be able to drop 2 of these in their deck, cut their deck count to 2, down by 2, because Rhoda is just an instant change this spell card into any warrior I want, and then play off of it. So I think Rhoda coming to 2 is enormous. I mean, it's going to add a lot of consistency to some warrior decks that haven't been seeing so much play in the past, and we'll talk about the meta later in the video, but Rhoda coming to 2 is a big, big change, and very shocking considering how long it has been at 1. I'm not sure why it came to 2. I'm not complaining. I can't wait to test it. Moving down to the next card that come to 2 was Formula Synchron. Big card to come to 2, I think. I think Synchros haven't been doing too much, but we have seen Sylvans coming up, especially aggressive Sylvans, and I think we might even be on the dawn of an interesting Plant Synchro build coming up with Sprouts and such. So that being the case, I think Formula Synchron coming at 2 is going to allow them to get a little bit more draw power. Now, we already had 2 tuners before, 2 level 2 tuners before. We had Formula and we had the weird reptile, but to have 2 formulas in your deck is way better. I see TGs or even, of course, Plant Synchro coming back and using this card. I definitely think this card is not something to laugh at. It is very powerful and something to keep an eye on, especially because a lot of players get rid of a formula and they're like, all right, well, they have to revive their formula in order to beat or to get Shooting Star out. But now that they have a second one, their play is still safe at hand, especially with the Soul Charge and such that are still in the game, which we'll talk about in just a minute. Cards that went to 3, and I think this is a very interesting way to look at this, is we have our D-Priz coming to 3. Now that is to me, a very big, a very cool thing. I love Dimensional Prison. It's a fantastic trap card. Some players don't think it's worth it. If you run a slower build, Dimensional Prison's a must because you have to banish the biggest threats that are going to run you over. So I think Dimensional Prison coming to 3 is going to be very interesting for dealing with those heavy level threats that are immune to destruction. And it just pretty much plays that play to just banish an enormous problem and keep you going. Moving on from that, going right into the triple Mirror Force that we will be seeing in a few days. That's going to be awesome. Triple Mirror Force, I think, was put in play, honestly, because Pendulum Summoning is about to be put in play. The OCG brought Torrential Tribute back. TCG seems to be taking a more attack-oriented aspect and putting triple D-Priz and triple Mirror so we can counter those giant drops. I think Mirror Force does do a great job in that, especially because now the big plays that Pendulums are going to have to do is, it's going to drop my Pendulums. Okay, there's triple Mirror. Now I have to get into my Stardust. But they have 2 back row. Now they might have a D-Priz or a Mirror. I'm not sure. I think putting both to 3 creates a good way to slow down the speed that Pendulums can have. That being said, that is the entire list. That is 7 cards, 6 going up, 1 going down, 6 up, 1 down. Pretty much allowing us to run free. That being said, I think this shows immensely how balanced of the meta we have. I think the biggest deck, of course, I said was Yugioh doing a lot of work. E-Dragons obviously haven't left the top with the hits, but they're not the devastating monsters they were a format or two ago. Looking also at the list, if you look at Tier 1 and Tier 2, and I'm even going to jump to Yu-Gi-Oh! Wikia for this because I think they have a good tier list. If you look at these lists, Tier 1 is Yugioh, Dragon Ruler, Boojins, Hat, and Mermail. And that's a very accurate statement. They are your big winners. However, that being said, Tier 2, a lot of Tier 2 is not far behind. A lot of Tier 2 to me is anti-meta or meta that's just not quite there yet. So Constellars and your Evil Swarms are great anti-metas. Your Madolches have been starting to see more play, which is interesting of all things. Harpies, definitely haven't seen a lot of them, but have a very powerful build underneath them. And of course, your Firefists are consistently climbing, and I think they're doing a great job of becoming a threat. People side against them well, but now, with all these other decks that people are going to have to start to side against with Pendulums and everything, you're going to have to start to choose which threats are worth dealing with, and I think Firefists are actually going to benefit from that, because I feel like they're sided really hard against. Prophecy, I think, is going to come back too. Even with Magician at 2, I've seen Prophecy do some crazy things. I would love to see some new Prophecy build comes out. Fate didn't come back. Don't know if it really needed to come back. And of course, Judgment, I don't see coming back anytime soon. And of course, Sylvans are up and coming. Sylvans are constantly getting support. Of all the decks there, Sylvans are climbing and fast. We also have that Noble Knight box coming out that's going to make the Noble Knights, I feel, a lot better. So the Tier 2 list is right behind the Tier 1 list. They're very close. It is not a runaway tier. Tier 3, however, is not, in my opinion, even close. So ignore Infernity, Darkwood, Ghost Trick, because they're just, in my opinion, troll decks that play half the time and aren't going to make the big push that these other decks are going to do. Going back then into our list, cards that people really expected to get hit but didn't get hit. First one, without a doubt, Soul Charge. Soul Charge didn't get hit. Everyone was screaming, this card's gonna get hit. It's too powerful. Rekindling's banned. Soul Charge is a very powerful card, but if you're not protecting your life points a lot, especially, only early game is Soul Charge that powerful of a card. Yes, it's a 1,000-point monster reborn, whatever, but you can't attack that turn either, and they can just beat you if you don't have a play off of that. Now, Soul Charge also combined with Duality becomes a huge problem. You can't use it. And mid-game, you might not have the life points to do the big plays you want to do with Soul Charge. So Soul Charge, I don't know if it's going to be hit. It's actually seen from the plays I've seen and the decks I've seen, Soul Charge is doing a decline. It's splashed a lot, but always one of the first cards sided out. So Soul Charge isn't something that I think players are going to use enough, and I think it's recognizable, and it's brand new. So I don't think it was going to get hit, but I don't think it's going to get hit even on the next list, assuming it doesn't seem to play that it has been seen. None of the, and I put them all on here, the hands, the artifact that I feel is probably the biggest threat in the artifact in the hat deck, and of course the spell and traps, none of these cards got hit. Hand Artifact Trap Tricks is a deck that I feel is such a counterplay deck, and it's awful, beyond awful to do hat versus hat. But that being said, I think the deck people are learning more and more simple ways to side against them that doesn't hurt their side against other decks. And by doing this, especially with that special summoning procedure for the hands, and of course you can even Stardust negate the hands and they don't get their special on top of that, people are finding ways to beat the hat decks in different manners. So I think the hat deck is doing so well because it was so unexpected. It plays so, I don't even want to say aggressively, but cookie cutter intricacy that you can't really beat. So that being said, I don't think the deck's going to get hit, but I do think with the additions that we're getting, especially with that Yugioh, along with the Rotas, the counter spell, or the counter traps and stuff, I mean, not counters, but like Dimensional Prison, Mirror Force, you are going to see the hand decks do well, but not in mass, like not even close to the mass that Yugiohs were just doing. And lastly, a card that I've been seeing a lot of players complain about is Madolche Angeli. This is a card people were screaming, oh, she's got to go to 1, she's too powerful, so on and so forth. However, she didn't get hit either. And I think the Madolches, unless played by the right player with the right luck, aren't going to do as well as someone who doesn't know or feel the vibe of Madolches. Madolches, I feel, is a deck that you can't just net deck perfectly, kind of like Hand Artifact Trap Tricks, I feel, are a similar boat. Net decking decks are slowly becoming, I think, erased, and what's shown is the prominent players who show very creative strategies, creative styles, and are able to take advantage of big plays. So I think Angeli doesn't really need to be hit. I think we'll see Madolches come up to that tier 1. I really feel it, but I also don't think they're going to be runaways like the Yugioh just were. That being said then, looking at the TCs, let's move back and go to shakeups. A big thing that I'm seeing is a lot of players are very unhappy with a quarterly ban list. So pretty much the quarterly ban list is we get a ban list 4 times a year. And because only a handful of packs come out in that 3 months or whatever it may be, then we don't have enough cards to come out that are like, okay, we need to ban this. Like Soul Charge in the hands kind of just came out in Legacy of the Dragons. So if they just came out, then how are we expected just to see them get banned or put to 1 so fast, and no one's going to run them? Like, it's not even worth it. So I don't really see like cards that fresh come out are going to get hit right away. Still, though, it does show that I feel that our no deck is particularly broken right now. I mean, even Mermails didn't even get a hit off of this list. Only Yugioh were the only thing to actually get hit. And I think that just shows a very good balance of meta. But I know a lot of players like the idea of, oops, sorry there, guys. A lot of players like the idea of doing Yugioh, and the idea of Yugioh is, oops, wrong one. Sorry, guys. Ban list. The idea of Yugioh just being that if you're playing a deck that is consistently topping and consistently destroying other meta decks, then they need to be hit. However, that being said, we're not seeing decks like Mermails run away. We're not seeing decks like E-Dragons run away with formats. It's very spread out, very diverse, very interesting. However, the idea of a shakeup is interesting because if you have players who pretty much are like you get a Goyo. Not thinking Goyo is a shakeup, but if you have players who like a whole deck gets torn down, if you take out, let's say Yugioh are taken out, E-Dragons are taken out, and Mermails are just obliterated by the ban list. Well, now all those players have to go play other decks, and yeah, that's interesting for them if you care. But those players, like if the deck's not broken, it's not doing like windups back in the day or E-Dragons or Prophecy, then it's still fun. Like, it still has other elements that you can try to beat, and there's new decks being created every day that you have to counter against and side against. So I think shakeups aren't really necessary. I think a consistent format with balanced gameplay is more important than anything. Another big thing I want to talk about is TCG versus OCG. So let's just get an OCG card up here. I'm going to use a Lightsworn one. Like, OCG has different cards, TCG has different cards. It's known. I mean, we have Sanctuary, they have the Archer. But that being said, that doesn't change the fact that the way the playstyles seem to be playing in formats is OCG is a very OTK, stop before you're about to die form style. So, like, they have Gorza too, they have their Torrents, they have Heavy still, they have plays that they can just drop and win so quickly. However, TCG, I feel, has more of a snowball effect, where TCG, you slowly gain momentum, and if your opponent is not countering your momentum or gaining momentum of their own, then you will just start to run away with it, and they can't do anything about it. A lot of our cards now that have been out is like Heavy and Dark Hole pretty much destroy a snowball. Like, if you start to snowball and you have 5 monsters and a Dark Hole comes out, you're done. Or a Torrent comes out, you're done. Or Heavy comes out and your back row is gone, you're done. In OCG, it's more as if you set everything, you get ready, and then all of a sudden you just get blown away, all your cards are gone, and then a big hit comes and you're done. So you have a snowball versus OTK strategy. I feel like this is reflected in the ban list. We have cards that are letting the snowball better, such as Rhoda or Deepers or Mirror. We slowed them down too. You can slow the snowball rather than building it. But OTK is very OCG oriented. And other than that, guys, I think I'm going to end today's episode with all of that. If you agree or disagree with anything that I've said or that we've been thinking about, then let us know in the comments below. If you like this video, leave a like, share, or subscribe. But by all means, give us your thoughts and what you think the meta is and what you think is going to make big plays and what you think will be changing the way we play in the future, especially with the ban list in the future, if we will stick with this quarterly report rather than a half year where it's a giant shakeup. And yeah, guys, other than that, I hope you guys have a great day, and thanks for watching us on The Graduates.